today on Mother Mayhem.
There's this other thing I tend to say when I see this piece of social media content that resonates, or when I hear the most perfect song lyric. If someone else wrote it, someone else felt it, and that makes us all a little less alone in it. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray. And today, daughters, we are talking about the reality that so many of you know all too well about life with your moms. Childhood can be awful, unfair, abusive, and traumatic, but also it can become oddly familiar and even predictable over time. She becomes the devil you know in some way. Then you get older, you start to separate, and you experience autonomy, perhaps for the first time. And that can be when it's like a whole new level of crazy gets unlocked, and suddenly you are managing a whole host of new lies, new manipulations, and new tactics. The devil you know becomes less known, less familiar, and you're able to anticipate even less. Sometimes, for some daughters, this is when the way you were raised becomes even more destabilizing, where getting yourselves regulated becomes even harder because you're trying to launch into your adult life, to leave the nest. And there she is, clipping your wings, holding you back, and making you feel bad for even thinking about leaving. This can be a time of real confusion for you daughters because you're out of the nest just enough to start to realize just how fucked up life inside the nest has been. You start to realize that not all moms move through the world the way yours do, and you begin to experience those first tastes of freedom, to know what it's like to make your own decisions. And maybe you even start to realize that you are not the shit person your mom has described you to be. Then you get pulled back home, back into the web, usually out of pressure and expectations, and in an effort to pull you in again, your mother becomes even more manipulative, more insidious, and more toxic in the way that she treats you, interacts with you, and talks about you. This is where today's daughter, Callie, finds herself. Now, Callie, I named you after the flower, the calla lily. And please don't take this one the wrong way, because I do know that people tend to associate lilies with funerals. But also, calla lilies can symbolize rebirth and transformation and new beginnings. And I do tend to think that that's the process you might be finding yourself in right now. One of my favorite quotes to share is this one I came across years ago. And when I found it, it was originally attributed to Cynthia Ocelli, though I've seen it credited to a few other people since. It says, "For a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it must come completely undone. The shell cracks, the insides come out, and everything changes. To someone who doesn't understand growth, it would look like complete destruction. And I know for so many of you, that's exactly what healing can feel like complete destruction. When I think of everything you all carry and what healing asks of you, it really does ask you to crack yourselves open. And I know that's a really big ask, but also you never have to do it alone. I never want Mayhem to be this dump and run podcast where I listen to your piles of hard and then go and hand you bigger piles of hard things to do right back to you. And that is why I've been working to build an ecosystem of safety and support for all of you around the podcast while you're doing this really hard work. Right now, we have 2 weekly support groups for daughters, one on Tuesday and another on Thursday. And we're also growing our online community of daughters where all of you daughters can meet, connect, share, and heal together. Because, yes, healing does ask all of you to break open in some way, but you never have to do it alone. You can find the links for all of this support in the show notes. And hopefully, in the next week or two, I'll be able to direct you to our brand new website, our new home for all things mayhem. I really can't wait. So, Callie, I chose your name because I think you're in that scared, terrifying, necessary process of growing while breaking open. The tension you're holding, the opposites in your story, you're longing to figure out what's true and what's real. Well, I imagine you can relate to that seed a little bit. Coming undone, cracking open, and don't look now, but also quietly beginning to grow. So here's your letter, and I'll find you on the other side. Dear Heather, I found your podcast after my therapist suggested that I research narcissism in mothers to see if any of it resonated with me. By episode 3, I felt like you were reading my mind, recognizing every feeling I've ever suppressed and putting it into words I have been too scared to accept. I cannot tell you how much your podcast has meant to me over these past few months. I've listened to many stories you have shared on your channel, and while I've admired all of the women who have spoken up about their experiences, I haven't heard a story that deals with partner and family conflict, where the daughter is caught in the middle at the start of adulthood. So I was hoping you could please spare some of your time to read my letter and offer some insight into how I could navigate my tricky situation moving forward. I got into an argument with my mom on her birthday. At the time, I was still living with my parents, something that they had strongly suggested to help me save money. I did not protest this suggestion, but I did have reservations as I wanted to have some space and independence. As a result, I would try to split my time pretty fairly between my partner and my family, but often this would be met with a lot of resistance from my mom, with barbed remarks, pursed lips, and of course, the silent treatment. Leading up to her birthday, I had bought gifts for her on behalf of my father, my younger sister, and I had spent each night after work baking her favorite cakes and desserts for the weekend and wrapping all of her presents, also while battling a cold. During this time, my mom was dealing with her own sickness, but unfortunately, since I do not work close to my family home and do not have the luxury of flexible hours, I was not able to help look after her much once I arrived home from work. On the day of her birthday, I arrived home from my parents' place before 8 a.m. I spent a lovely day with her and my family, and my partner came over in the afternoon. Once it was getting late, I let her know that I was leaving with my partner at 9. But since I had not told her my plans prior to this, she got visibly angry and shut down. I've always tried to read and anticipate my mother's moods and alleviate them where possible, bending to her every wish or apologizing profusely when I've upset her. But this was one of those times that with every attempt made, it only made matters worse. My partner could not understand what had happened and was frustrated with how I was trying to fix something when I hadn't done anything wrong. Upon asking my mother why she was so upset, she exploded. She told me that I didn't care about her or her current illness, that I was not loyal to her or the family, how I was a terrible daughter who she could never count upon. Outraged by this, and having seen how much I had done for her birthday and every other week, my partner intervened, standing up for me and questioning her about why it was my responsibility to cower to her every wish. The argument escalated, and I was told to leave and to not return for 3 days. Very specific, Callie. After the most agonizing 3 days of silence, I returned to the family home and sat down with my mother, father, and younger sister for a family discussion. They informed me that my partner was in fact the one who was out of line, suggesting he had anger issues, was beyond disrespectful and condescending, concluding that he was no longer welcome in the home and that my parents did not want to see him ever again. After this event, I visited my therapist, who I had seen a year prior. At the time of this meeting, I was still unsure of who was in the right, my mom, who had done so much for me, or my partner, who was making more and more sense as time went on, who also cared for me really deeply. It was in these discussions with my therapist that I realized just how deep my mother's manipulation went, and it was a bitter pill to swallow when this was all I had ever known. I looked back at the time she had claimed I was disloyal for spending time with my partner's family, claiming I didn't care about her at all and was ditching her for their wealth, something I was unaware of when I first started seeing my partner and has never had any importance to me in the relationship. She would remind me of how much she had done for me growing up, how suddenly me wanting to leave the nest was hard on her, how her future was beginning to look very grim with me not being around as much. It always made me upset hearing how hurt my mom was, but I also knew that I was giving her all the time I possibly could, leaving me feeling guilty every time I chose to spend time with someone that wasn't her. However, I still second guess myself. She isn't your quote unquote typical narcissist. She does show me affection and does offer compliments. She became the person I went to for everything, but I was just never sure when she would switch, when she would become hyper judgmental or cold, or when it would be directed at me, my friends, my partner, or other family members. I often wonder if it was my own fault that I wanted the closeness and approval of my mom so badly that I let her get close, almost giving her permission to comment, advise, and criticize every aspect of my life, whether it be my studies, my career, my relationships, friendships, my physique, my sport, my clothing, or my future. Admittedly, though, it worked. I did succeed. I won national medals in sport. I got numerous academic scholarships through university and high school and ended up with first-class honors at the end of my studies. However, these were not just my achievements. They were hers too. My achievements were a testament to her mothering ability, and I would not have gotten there without her. While there's a lot of truth in that, I feel like I'm constantly reminded that I should be indebted to her and her sacrifice and should always choose her and be by her side no matter what, even when she's in the wrong. So now time has passed and I've moved out of the house and I'm living with roommates. I chose to do this since I felt I would have been cut out of my family's lives if I had chosen to move in with my partner. So this seemed like a good compromise, where it's allowing me to gain some independence and the ability to set some boundaries, something I think is worth the financial strain. Things are getting somewhat better with my family, and I do visit them when possible. However, there is still the occasional barbed comment from my mom about how I'm still with my partner, how being with him is disloyal to the family, how I don't see them enough, or how I still haven't resolved the situation, meaning no apology from my partner. On the other hand, my partner has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this. He's come to a couple of my therapy sessions to help understand how he can help me. He's been supportive of my move out of the house and visits my new flat regularly. He's always there for me if it gets too much and I just fall apart. Despite this, neither of us can ignore the fact that our future life together, if it continues, will look very different. I have always been close to my family, and I have always wanted that to remain. I have always pictured my parents would continue to be a big part of my life moving forward, being there to walk me down the aisle, helping me look for my first home, or being present and involved grandparents. However, that is a reality I'm struggling to still envision given everything that has happened. I'm not naive enough to ask you how I get that fantasy back, but I want to know, is there any way I can help mend the relationship between my mom and myself and my partner and my family? If there isn't, How do I deal with the guilt of not giving my mother and myself what I had always hoped for in my future, as I know I will be constantly reminded of the disappointment I have caused? I realize these are impossible questions to ask without the aid of a crystal ball, but I just wanted some guidance as I'm feeling incredibly lost and torn, and I don't want to have to choose between the love of my life and my family. Heather, if you're still reading, I would like to thank you for taking the time to read my letter. I don't doubt you are constantly inundated with other letters and emails and have a lot on your plate between the podcast, your practice, and everything else in between. So I do not anticipate a response anytime soon or at all. Surprise, surprise, Callie. But I felt I should reach out just the same. Thank you for all the incredible work you do. You have created an incredible community of women who are finding comfort, support, and guidance in your podcasts. I look forward to your future episodes. Yours faithfully, Callie. Oh, Callie. I am so sorry that at a time in your life that should be just completely filled with new experiences and new beginnings and all things new, that this time in your life has become so fraught with tension and conflict, all of which we know your mom created. I can see in your letter that you have made some really important connections here. You did that for yourself, and I can tell that Wise Mind is already with you. But also, I do hear your trauma brain, and I can hear the tension you're holding, trying to manage both of them. I really get that you're trying to understand what is real and what is true. So first, before we get to the helping part of this conversation, I first want you to know that I hear you. So many daughters listening in hear you on this, Callie. Listening to your story, I imagine other daughters felt your story in their bellies as they remembered how this happened to them too, when they were just trying to get out into the world. And I imagine other daughters closer to your age are also thinking, yes, me too, right now. Is there a video camera on my life? So, Callie, thank you for sharing your story and for offering me the opportunity to talk directly about all of the dynamics that you are managing as you're working to separate yourself from your family while you're trying to become your own person, connecting with others outside your family. All of this is a really big deal, and I know how many mixed messages you're getting right now. First, let's break it down a little bit so that you can see all of the pieces you're dealing with, and then we can help you sort through what might be next for dealing with them. Let's start here. You keep asking yourself, Callie, what was right or who was right, your mother or your partner? And I get it. This is a common trauma question. It's one of those questions where I could say, tell me you're a daughter without telling me you're a daughter. But here's the thing I want you to hear out loud. You don't need someone else to be right in order for you to believe yourself. You don't need to hand over the reins of your own knowing to anyone else. Not anymore. And I think that's the process you're actually finding yourself in right now. I think this is where you're working to figure yourself out. Your feelings aren't a debate that needs to get settled. Your feelings are the evidence of what you experienced, that your experiences were real, that they hurt, that they confused you, and that all of this matters. And knowing those things, that this was real, that it hurt, that it confused you, Callie, that is enough. But I'll do you a favor here and let's break it down a little bit further. It's important to me that you understand yourself. Your mom created a whole heck of a lot of enmeshment between the two of you. And with that, she ended up teaching you all of this in ways that were overt and covert. that your belonging was conditional. It was conditional on you staying the same, on not breaking the family code, on staying loyal. Your mom offered her support as something you had to earn, something you owed her back with your loyalty, even when she was in the wrong. And that is classic enmeshment 101 right there. This is when the parent-child relationship ends up getting so blurred that you daughters end up feeling responsible for your mom's entire emotional world. And in that world, love isn't freely given, it's conditional. And your autonomy, wanting your own time, your own space, your own relationships become framed as betrayal. And I also want to gently name the grief that we're inevitably going to find right here. Many daughters are raised to believe that love equals compliance, that care means sacrifice, that saying no means you're being ungrateful. But here's the truth, daughters. Take a beat, write this one down. It's a good Heatherism. Love doesn't require self-abandonment, not in healthy families, not in healthy partnerships, and certainly not from daughters who've already given so much. Callie, you are not just grieving the birthday blow up right now, or even any of the tension that followed. You're grieving the easy future you had hoped for. Your mom at your wedding, grandparents for your future children, holidays that wouldn't be riddled with so much tension. And you daughters know that we have talked about this idea before, this kind of grief. But recently, in my own research, I've learned that it has a name. Anytime we can name and organize these really painful concepts, I do think it can help make more sense to yourselves. But also there's this other thing I tend to say when I see this piece of social media content that resonates, or when I hear the most perfect song lyric. If someone else wrote it, someone else felt it, and that makes us all a little less alone in it. This grief, Callie, that you're experiencing is called a fantasy bond, and it's real. It's talking about the powerful attachment that you daughters feel, not just to who your mothers are in actuality, but to who you believed or always hoped they could be. I want to be clear with all of you. Letting go of that kind of longing and that desire is not about giving up hope. It's giving up false hope. You're giving up the kind of hope and longing that keeps you trying harder for her so that you can focus more on yourselves and on your needs. And Callie, I want to walk you back through your story for a second so you can see what I saw in it. When you made a small, reasonable decision, leaving your mom's birthday at 9 p.m., it wasn't just met with hurt feelings or mild disappointment. It was met with a full-on character attack. You're disloyal. You don't care. You're a terrible daughter. That is not disappointment that you felt from her. Some psychobabblers might call it a narcissistic injury, but I prefer to name it as another manipulative tactic your moms use when you're trying to assert yourselves and make yourselves separate from her. And I say this because she followed the narcissistic mother's handbook to a T. She gave you the silent treatment. She piled on the guilt. She shifted the blame. And like we heard with Charlie a few weeks ago, she framed you as the harmful one. Even your partner speaking up was framed as an act of aggression. Why? Because he broke the family rule. He said out loud what everyone else was too afraid to name. And that is dangerous in families like these. It disrupts the entire system. And let me be clear about my word choice right here. I am not saying what your partner did was dangerous. And I am not implying he did something wrong. He had your back. He protected you. He bore witness to your experience and he stood up for you to your family system, to your mother. And that would be read and perceived as a threat, as dangerous. And I want to add another little bit here, if you'll allow me to. Callie, your entire family is caught inside this web. They are deep in the thick of it. They too are enmeshed with your mom and they're conditioned. And also, they're likely traumatized in their own ways by your mom. Your mother may be at the center of it, but everyone's behavior makes so much more sense when you realize they are protecting the system, not each other. Of course you feel isolated. Of course you feel different. You are doing it differently. You've stepped out of the role. And right now, in this time between grief and healing, it is really lonely because, of course, it is. But also, it is the most powerful thing you could have done for yourself. And I really believe that with a little bit more time on this road, future you is going to be thanking present day you for how you showed up for her. And Callie, I want to circle back to something else that you said. You wrote, she isn't your typical narcissist. She does show me affection. So let's just pause here. I want to go easy or as easy as possible. This is the push-pull so many of you daughters feel. She gives you just enough warmth, just enough validation to keep you hoping. And then she pulls the rug out. And then she does that again and again. And what's really hard sometimes to wrap your minds around, it's not just the lying and the manipulation, the gaslighting or the smears campaign that are narcissistic. These other so-called quote unquote good behaviors are all part of how your moms show up in relationship. And remember what we've talked about before. Narcissists can't do relationships because they can't experience emotions or connections in the way that we do. So instead of connection, they are working to keep your attention and they're working to maintain their narrative of the story. If your moms were just awful to you 24/7, their gig might be up. People would stop trying to engage them. People would stop giving them their attention. So they create tension, the push-pull, the will they, won't they. So you all end up staying in the game. So you stay in the chase. So your attention stays on them in an effort to prove your loyalty. Callie, there are a number of threads in your story here, and I'm trying to be pretty careful so that I'm not pulling on all of them. I don't want you to become undone by any of this, but I'm trying to offer you all of this to create a container for you, a way of holding all of these really hard and contradictory things. Your intention with yourself because of the double bind your mom is creating. Be the good daughter or be the adult woman in a supportive, healthy partnership. You're trying to do both and you're being made to feel like that's betrayal. But here's the thing. Love should never require you to split yourself in half. What you are noticing here is a contradiction about what you're being told love and loyalty should look like. Because when a relationship requires you to shrink or to contort yourself in order to keep the peace, that isn't love. That is a role. Your mother assigned it to you and your family has now gone and co-signed it. But you, Callie, did not sign that contract, and it is okay to release yourself from it. Callie, all of your struggles and questions make so much sense to me. You were raised to attend to your mother's needs first. and she's been using guilt as her personal control tactic. But now you're learning the difference between healthy guilt, which is when your behavior violates your own values, and toxic guilt, which is when someone else is upset that you had a boundary. And I think you're starting to really see and put all of this together for yourself, that this isn't about closeness, it's about control. And I know you're grieving the loss of being the quote unquote good daughter here, but let me shed a light on what you have done, because it's really hard work you've done. You moved out. You separated enough to hear your own voice. You've started creating space for what was expected of you and of what feels true for you. That isn't any small thing, Callie. It's self-loyalty. Like that seed I talked about at the beginning of the show. You gave yourself room to grow. You cracked open the shell. And even though I know it still hurts like holy hell, this is you healing. This is you doing it. Now, let's help you come up with a game plan for how to move on from here in a way that also can feel true for you. You asked, is there any way I can help mend the relationship between my mother and myself, and my partner and my family? If there isn't, how do I deal with the guilt of not giving my mother and myself what I had always hoped for in my future? And I know I will be constantly reminded of the disappointment I've caused. I realize these are impossible questions to ask, but I just wanted some guidance, and I'm feeling incredibly lost and torn, and I don't want to have to choose between the love of my life and my family. Callie, it is really clear to me here how much you care, how much all of this matters to you. But I need to gently remind you of something I said earlier. The guilt you're carrying is not proof that you have done something wrong. It's proof that you have stepped outside of a system where your self-abandonment was expected. And the disappointment you feel, I don't think it's something that belongs to you. It might be the grief of your mother realizing that she can't control you the way she used to, or your family feeling disoriented now that you're not playing your old role. You have been the quote unquote good daughter for a long freaking time. You've been the one who kept the peace, absorbed the blame, softened the truth. And now you are working to show up in your full adult self. And that is always going to disrupt dysfunctional dynamics. You did not cause this rupture, Callie. You're just no longer pretending that it isn't there. So what do we do now? Let's talk through some possible next steps. I'm not doing or offering anything dramatic here. There's no real big decisions required. Just small, grounded actions that hopefully can work together to bring you closer to your own truth. And Callie, we do have to do that. We have got to get you grounded in your truth. We have to figure out what your truth actually is, not what would please everyone, not what would avoid conflict, but what you want in your relationships, the one you have with your partner, the one you have with your mom, the one you have with your family. Here are some questions that you can start asking yourself. And all of you daughters, join in on Callie here and grab yourselves a pen. I think these are worth writing down and making note of. So first, what kind of daughter do I want to be? And what kind of daughter am I not willing to be? What would safety feel like in my family relationships? What's more important to me right now? Being understood by everyone or being honest with myself? And Callie and everyone listening, these are not going to be questions that you'll be able to answer overnight, but I do want you to write them down. Maybe write each question down on its own page and let yourself jot down thoughts about each one as they come up for you. And then, Callie, this next part is going to be hard and it's going to ask a lot of you. But I want to encourage you to resist the urge to fix this or to even smooth it over. Your mom might not be ready or able to meet you in a healthy place right now, and your family may continue to respond to you from their own trauma brains. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. That is entirely a reflection of them and their limitations. You're the one breaking the cycle, and you don't have to manage their discomfort in order to be in integrity with yourself. So instead of thinking about or asking, how do I fix this? What happens if we change the question? Maybe instead we ask, what boundaries help me stay connected to myself while staying in limited connection with them? And let's be honest, you and me, you have some grieving to do. This shit is hard and it's sad, and there is a lot you do need to let go of. You are in the process of giving up on the illusion that love requires sacrificing your entire self. And Callie, you are allowed to want a wedding where everyone gets along. You're allowed to feel sad that your children may not have the grandparents you imagined or wanted for them. But I also want to offer a little bit of a reframe, if you'll allow me to. This is not going to be about choosing your partner over your mom. It's about choosing a life where you are allowed to be fully known and deeply loved. Your partner has shown up in really beautiful ways. You've surrounded yourself with supportive roommates. You've returned to therapy. You are making decisions with intention. And that is real, honest to goodness work. So sticking with our analogy for this chat, let's keep watering those seeds. Make space for the life you do want rather than bending yourself backward, trying to revive the one that asks you to disappear. And Callie, you asked me whether it's possible to repair the relationship with your mom. And here's the really hard truth with that one, sister. It is never going to happen by betraying yourself. If repair is possible, it will come through your truth, not in spite of it. And you are already working to become someone who can trust herself to know the difference. Here's your next step. Keep showing up for the life that is actually working. Let yourself want things. Let yourself believe your own experience. Let it be enough that something feels right, even when no one else around you agrees. This doesn't mean that you have to cut anyone off tomorrow or declare some big honking boundary, but it does mean starting to build some new muscle memory for trusting yourself. So here are a few ways that you can keep moving forward, one small step at a time. Now, you heard me just recently in another episode talk about creating a touchstone. But here, Callie, we want to help you create a touchstone for your truth. So I'm going to encourage you to write down 3 things you know that are true about what happened, even if your mom or your family would say otherwise. And if you have more than 3 things, keep going, sister. Never going to be any harm in that one. And then keep those things private. You can come back to those truths, those facts, whenever you start to doubt yourself. And I personally tend to create a lot of touchstones in my own life. They protect me sometimes from going down rabbit holes. And I think of them a little, but they're going to ground me to my truth when my nervous system goes all cuckoo and wants to change the ending to a story that I already know to be true. So, Callie, you might write down touchstones that sound like I showed up for her birthday sick and exhausted. I was punished for leaving at 9 p.m. My partner defended me. He didn't attack her. And that is your truth. That is your North Star. And if you're really finding yourself spinning out, think of physical things that you can carry and hold right on your person to remind you of all of this. Maybe there's symbols, a stone in your pocket, a bracelet, a picture on your home screen of your phone, something that brings you back to and reminds you of your truth. And I guess I really like this seed analogy we have going here, Callie. So I'm going to stick with it if you don't mind. I'm going to encourage you here and right now to tend to what is growing. You have already created so much space for yourself. You moved out, you chose you, and these are not small things by any stretch of the imagination. Now go and nurture those choices. Give yourself permission to enjoy them. Make your new space even more yours. Cook something you like, play your music. You can practice asking yourself, what do I want to do with this time that is mine? This is how you come back home to yourself. You have already done some pretty hairy, scary things. And now we work on helping you protect your peace by helping you practice little micro boundaries. A lot of daughters tend to think that they have to go all in on boundaries and they have to do it all at once and they have to go all or nothing. And if they don't go all or nothing, they're doing it wrong. And that isn't true. You actually don't have to set every boundary all at once. And you probably shouldn't because your nervous systems would all start going cuckoo at the same time. You can start small. The next time your mom makes a comment about your partner, try, I'm not available for that conversation, or simply change the subject. Leave the room. Work on saying less. And I really want to help you release your guilt. It is not yours to hold, to pick up, or to even own. So the next time your guilt flares up, I want to encourage you to try this. Is this guilt a sign that I have done something wrong? Or have I simply done something new? Then answer it. Well, that was probably a little obvious. But let yourself see that your guilt actually just means that you're healing, not hurting. You're breaking patterns. And I hear that having some semblance of a family connection is important. And I want to honor that with you and I want to meet you where you're at. But also, I really need you to check in with yourself about this because you need to be able to work with yourself on having realistic expectations based on what they have proven themselves capable of and not capable of. You're going to have to give yourself permission to wonder, what kind of relationship can they actually do? And what kind of relationship am I willing to have? You are not obliged to stay in connection that costs you your truth or your clarity. You can stay in touch without having to stay entangled. You get to decide what amount of proximity to your family feels safe. And Callie, we have got to let the light in. We have to help you start holding and collecting your joy. And I know this sounds like I've just gone all Heather, and it might sound so unrelated, but I promise you it's not. I want to encourage you to start allowing your joy in. And I want you to start doing that on purpose. Do something, anything, just because it feels good, not because it'll win you points or because it'll prove your worth. Callie and every daughter listening, this is what it means to live outside that glass box, to slowly, bravely let yourselves take up space in your own lives. You don't need to wait for approval or permission. You already have the green light. You already know what's true. And I believe that. And I believe you. And all of you women are in this community of women around the world who are in this together. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you have a question you'd like me to consider for the show, please do email me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. You are always welcome to share your story or questions by recording yourself using the voice app on your phone. For best recording quality, please do record directly into your phone without using headphones or Bluetooth speakers. We're building an incredible community as well over on Instagram, and I'd love to see you over there too. You can find us at Daughters NPD. Lastly, if you love what you've been hearing here on Mayhem and have found the show helpful in your own trauma recovery, please do consider becoming a Mother Mayhem sponsor by purchasing Simple Scripts for Saying Hard Things. It's a resource I created that provides the right words for the hard conversations, and it covers life, love, and work. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please do share the show with her. Your reviews and social shares help spread the word, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing the show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks so much for your time today. As always, I'm in it with you. Bye for now.